To the country this year dumps torrential rains over several provinces, leaving homes flooded and turning roads into raging rivers.
Davao City Mayor Baste Duterte says there's abuse of power in the removal of at least 35 Davao City police officers over drug-related killings. We'll talk more about this issue with Davao Region Police Spokesperson Catherine De La Rey later on.
And can oil reserves in the West Philippine Sea help pull down inflation in the country? San Miguel Corporation's Ramon Ang thinks so and urges the government to, quote, protect our territory.
Welcome to the big story. I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Pauline Verzosa.
And I'm Sean Yao.
Straight into our top story for tonight, and it's Typhoon Aghon, the country's first recorded storm of 2024. Now, over the weekend, it passed along the eastern part of the country, leaving severe flooding and damage in its wake. Thousands of people were forced to flee their homes.
The storm also forced the cancellation of several flights and sea trips, leaving many stranded. This was the case at the Manila North Harbor Port, where hundreds of passengers were left waiting and stranded after ships were prohibited from sailing due to Typhoon Aghon. And it was pretty much the same situation in ports or at ports in provinces like Batangas and Oriental Mindoro.
Kasi ang nangyayari po, yung mga pasahero natin, dumadating pa sa pantalan kahit po kanselado na po yung mga biyahe. Dahil ang natatanggap po nila ay on hold lang yung biyahe o delayed. But nagbaba naman po ang Philippine Coast Guard ng no-sail zone policy. So ibig sabihin po noon wala talaga pong makakabiyahe.
Now, as mentioned earlier, Typhoon Aghon forced thousands of people to flee their homes, which was the case in San Juan, Batangas. As you can see in the video, this road in Barangay Lipahan has seemingly turned into a river. This was also the situation in Barangay Tipaz, where residents admit that they were not prepared for the typhoon. Around 20 houses were reportedly damaged in San Juan, Batangas.
Kung akala namin mahina lang, yung lumating nung yung madaling araw, saka lumakas ang hangin. Ito, katulad dito, nawasak. Lumipad ang mga bubong, yero.
At syempre, nagdulot din ng pinsala sa Metro Manila ang tuloy-tuloy na pag-ulan dala ng bagyong Aghon. Aside from the flooding in parts of the metro, a large tree was uprooted on Hill Puyat Avenue Extension in Pasay during the heavy rain and strong winds last night. Meanwhile, rescuers worked together to remove the concrete debris that fell on a house in Barangay Balong Bato in San Juan. The wall of a vacant lot suddenly gave way during yesterday's heavy rain and collapsed on the house. Fortunately, no one was injured.
Nataranta kasi ako eh. Kasi yung bata nga parang natulala eh. Hindi mapatayo eh dahil sa nangyari. Siguro, akala talaga namin bahay na talaga yung bibigay. Yung mga anak ko, pamangkin ko, pinalabas ko muna. Sabi ko, labas kayo, baka manunod ang bahay natin. Takbuhan na nga kami sa labas.
Did you get surprised over the weekend? I mean, we had Francis Orsho last week and he was saying that the typhoon would arrive Monday and Tuesday. To be honest, did not expect it to be.
He actually, I think, did say, based on the forecast track, that it was parang tinatahak niya yung gilid, yung eastern seaboard nung bansa. Meaning, it started sa may east of Mindanao, umakyat siya ng Samar Leyte area, umakyat siya ng Bicol Region, Quezon, and I think hanggang Wednesday pa siya, di ba? Tataas talaga siya, Cagayan. So, uubusin talaga niya tong lahat. But I think so far, Quezon nga is the worst hit. But yesterday, I was telling you guys while the video was playing na nasa Nueva Ecija ako, nasa Pantabangan Dam ako, as in sa loob ng dam mismo. Kasi nga, it's been dry because of the drought. And so we thought, wala pa rainy season, so punta tayo kasi exposed pa yung old town. So pagdating namin doon,
ito yung pinupuntahan ng mga turista.
Correct. Kasi bihira lang siya lumitaw, di ba? It's all over, like it was covered by the BBC, all these international. Kasi nakakaaliw naman talaga. Nilubog nila 14 barangay. So at the peak of the drought last month, nakalitaw yung town plaza and one whole barangay. Pagdating namin nung kahapon.
Marami ng tubig.
Well, yung town plaza na lang yung nakalitaw. Na-cover na daw yung Kasi nga it's been raining. And we couldn't, go earlier. But so far, nandito kami sa loob and the rains are falling. Pero despite that, makikita mo pa rin talaga, natuyo pa rin yung dam.
A lot of people didn't expect talaga the heavy rains, especially over the weekend, no? Ako, I was just indoors since, it's the first typhoon of the year.
Cuddle
So,
weather, ika nga. Kasi sabi nga
sweater
nila,
weather.
teka, hindi yata cuddle weather
Ano?
ito. Kailangan natin ligpit ng gamit.
Oo.
Magbuhat ng gamit.
Yes.
It's
Hindi
been
siya
going-
cuddle
prepared,
weather,
be
medyo
prepared.
preparation,
Yes.
weather.
Correct. We did, some areas experienced a surprise over the weekend. Speaking of, Lucena City has been placed under a state of calamity due to the effects of Typhoon Aghon. And for that, let's get updates from Mon Gualvez.
In this video, you can see how high and strong floodwaters were in Barangay Lual Barrio in the town of Mauban as Typhoon Aghon passed Quezon Province yesterday. This iron fence was swept away, as well as an entire house. The flood reportedly reached over 12 feet high, according to some residents. In one part of Barangay Lual Barrio, even concrete walls were no match for the raging waters.
Ayun yung mataas na naabot pa
Over in Catanawan, this area suddenly became a river in the deluge, with mud and debris making it more destructive. Typhoon Aghon's onslaught claimed at least 3 lives in Quezon. One, a 7-month-old baby who was seen floating in the river in Pagbilao, Quezon. A second victim, a 14-year-old male, died in Lucena City after a tree fell on their house. Another victim, a farmer in Barangay Kabatang Tiaong, was asleep when an acacia tree fell on him. As the sun rose and the rain stopped, this was the situation in the town of Mauban. Residents picking up muddy belongings that can still be salvaged.
Yun po ang nakakalungkot, sir. Wala. Parang cellphone lang at saka konting pera. Ang nadala lang namin palabas kasi bigla yung pagtaas ng tubig
Longtime resident Nanay Jeline said this was the first time their home got submerged.
Lahat po ng pinaghirapan namin ay naubos ay dito lang po pala pupunta sa baha. Kaya po talagang ako'y sobra-sobra ang panghihinayang.
Overall, 30 of 40 barangays in Mauban were submerged in floodwaters. The LGU admitted they were surprised by the impact of the typhoon. They did not expect the strength of the rain and wind from Typhoon Aghon, which caused a storm surge exacerbated by the high tide.
Akala nga po namin ay dadaan lang. At yung pala ay nagtagal pa dito. Kaya doon po talagang binugbog na dito ang bayan ng Mauban.
Well, let's now check the latest with Typhoon Aghon. Pag-asa said it was last spotted some 155 kilometers east of Casiguran, Aurora. Aghon is seen heading northeast, crossing the Philippine Sea before exiting the Philippine Area of Responsibility by Wednesday. Several areas remain under tropical cyclone wind signal number 1, namely Aurora, the eastern portion of Quirino, southern portion of Nueva Vizcaya, the eastern portion of Isabela, the northern portion of Quezon, and the northwestern portion of Camarines Norte. Despite the rainy weekend, the amount of rainfall was not enough to bring water in major dams up to their normal operating levels. Dams in Luzon saw their water levels rise by just a few meters after days of rainfall from Aghon.
And though Aghon continues to bring rains over some parts of the country, Pag-asa has clarified that this is not yet the start of the wet season. Sabi ng Pag-asa, they are continuously monitoring weather patterns in the country to determine the onset of the rainy season. And based on their forecast, this could be sometime in the first half of June. But for now, extreme heat continues to persist in some parts of the country. In fact, the heat index in Giwan, Eastern Samar hit the extremely dangerous level of 54 degrees Celsius today. That's coming from the 55 degrees Celsius heat index felt there on Sunday or yesterday, which is the highest ever recorded in the country, breaking the record of 53 degrees Celsius in Iba, Zambales, which was recorded back on April of 28. A heat index beyond 52 degrees Celsius means a very high possibility of heat stroke.
Literally, we don't know how to feel.
Yeah, hot or cold.
Yeah.
Hot or cold.
Mas worse pa to sa parang
bipolar.
crush mo nung college,
Oo.
di ba? Di mo
Don't
sure
know
kung...
what to expect, bipolar na
Diba?
bipolar
Extreme weather patterns, I'm not sure if it's because of climate change or it's because of just the El Nino and La Nina season
Probably
transitioning.
a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Right? That's what everyone will say, which has been affecting like all aspects of our lives lately. Pati peace of mind ko na affected ng init, lamig.
I heard
Today
you
is so humid.
talking about that also in your interview regarding turbulence, diba? Climate
Yeah.
change is also
And we have another
Yeah.
report of that.
Yeah. But we'll save that for later. For now, we're
Correct.
gonna take a quick break. But when we return, 35 Davao City Police members have been relieved from their duties to ensure due process amid a drug killings probe. We will be speaking with Davao's Regional Public Information Officer and spokesperson of the Davao Region Police Force, Police Major Catherine Del Rey. When we return, stay with us.
This is not the first time na ginagawa po ito ng RIAS and even the PNP na kapag isang pulis po natin ay nai-involve po sa mga illegal, reported illegal activities. Kung sakasakali po matatapos po yung investigation na ginagawa po ng RIAS at kung makikita naman po na wala naman po silang kasalanan, ay magandang opportunity po ito sa ating mga kapulisan para makapag-present din po sila ng mga ebidensya na makakapagpatunay na above board po yung ginawa po nilang operation doon sa sinasabi pong mga nagresulta po sa pagkakapatay po ng suspect.
Mayor Duterte meanwhile condemned the move, saying that it appears to be an abuse of power from higher authorities. He then noted a, quote, significant 69% decrease in focused crimes from May 2023 to 2024, something he noted as an accomplishment that reflects the dedication and competence of their police force. Duterte says it's disheartening to witness such disruptive actions within law enforcement agencies. He adds that he opposes any efforts to, quote, undermine the hard-earned trust between their community and law enforcement.
And here to talk to us more about that, we have with us on the show Police Major Catherine Del Rey, Davao's Regional Public Information Officer and spokesperson of the Davao Region Police. Magandang gabi, Major.
Magandang gabi po sa inyo at lahat po na nakapinig at nanonood po sa programa ninyo. Magandang gabi.
Major Catherine, unang-una, meron po tayong natatanggap na reports of misinformation. Nakasama raw po kayo sa mga narelyebo. Unang-una, totoo po ba yon? Has that been cleared out? And how many police officers in total talaga yung na-relieve at ano po ang status nila ngayon?
Ang total po talaga na na-relieve sa Davao City Police Office ay 35 PNP personnel, including the city director, and they are now assigned at the Regional Personnel Holding Accounting Section of Police General Office 11. The relief of the 35 DCO personnel, ma'am, was based on the recommendation of the Regional Affairs Service 11 or the RIAS 11 to place these personnel under administrative relief. And it should be noted that such action was not taken lightly by the regional director, but with full deliberation and profound consideration of all the facts and surrounding circumstances of the RIAS 11 investigation. And of course, with the end view of ascertaining the truth, and ang pangyayari naman po is in accordance with the observance of the procedural due process, ma'am, aimed at ensuring transparent and of course the accountability of public officers. And after naman po ng conclusion ng conduct na investigation, and if ang finding po ay non-culpability, PR11 naman po, among others, may reinstate them to their previous designation.
Hindi po kayo kasama doon sa 35?
Ay, hindi po. I'm still the Public Information Officer of Police General Office 11, ma'am.
Okay. Mayor Catherine, nagsimula ito right after kinundena ni Mayor Baste Duterte ang lahat ng mga drug personalities dyan. Nagdeklara siya ng all-out war. Sunod nun na nagkagulo na. What do you think led to the, kumbaga, administrative relief of these officers? Kasi ngayon, sinasabi ni Mayor Baste Duterte na hindi siya sang-ayon sa ginawang administrative relief dito sa mga 35 na police officers, kasama na ang Chief of Police ng Davao City.
Ma'am, part lang po talaga ito ng procedural process, part ng investigation, ng motu proprio investigation ng RIAS 11 to ascertain that the police officers involved in the operation, including the commanders, have followed the law and followed yung mga policies natin and guidelines, specifically yung police operational procedure. The administrative relief is not a penalty to them, but only for the ongoing motu proprio investigation, so that it would be fair, just, and transparent, and then mawala po yung doubt that they can influence any witnesses or tamper any evidences. Pag ma-find naman po na non-culpable po sila dun sa ongoing investigation, they could again be reassigned to their previous assignment. That is why the city director of Davao City Police Office was replaced by Police Colonel Rolindo Sugilon, the Deputy Regional Director for Operations of Pier 11, that is, in addition to his duties and responsibilities as DRDO, he is the officer in charge of Davao City Police Office, or the caretaker. There are people who are questioning the move that maybe it's just a way of Colonel Rolindo to Colonel Sugilo to really be assigned as the city director. The answer would be no, because the position of city director would be 2 steps down of his position as deputy regional director for operations, which is 1 step na lang po para po maging 1-star rank general po siya. And then doon naman po sa mga police stations na na-relieve ang mga station commanders, ang pumalit naman po sa kanila ay OIC din po, or officer in charge. And then ang officer na inassign is the rank of police captain, which is doon na rin na-assign ng police station. There were no movements of officers from other stations or other units para umupo as officer in charge of the police station. This clearly shows that the relief of the officers of the concerned station is only for the ongoing motu proprio investigation of the RIAS 11.
Okay. Ilawin na, Major? Yes, pwede linawin lang natin. So, kasi yung basic issue here is kung standard operating procedure po ba, no, na i-relieve administratively ang mga sangkot sa isang operation na may namatay? Is it as, kumbaga, black and white as that? Or does this happen every time na may namamatay, no, sa isang operasyon? Or hindi po ba? And is it a case-to-case basis?
Every may namamatay po sa operation, either operation on anti-illegal drugs, operation on the service of warrant of arrest, implementation of search warrant for manhunt operation. Pag may namatay po, either may victim or civilian, or yung suspect, automatic, this is a mandate of the RIAS 11 to conduct motu proprio investigation. And the relief of any personnel and or commander will be depending on the ongoing investigation of the RIAS 11. The RIAS 11 will be the one who will recommend to the commander if there is a need to administratively relieve any commander or PNP personnel. For this case, it was recommended the RIAS 11 to administratively relieve the said 35 DCO personnel.
Okay. Major Catherine, hi. Tanungin ko lang, no, kamusta ang operations ngayon ng Davao City PNP? Kasi nga, nabanggit nyo nga na 35 officers ang na-relieve. May temporary replacement po ang police chief, si acting OIC nga po na si Police Colonel Rolindo Sugilon. Pero yung ibang officers na na-relieve, paano po mangyayari sa operations ng PNP?
Yung sa na-relieve na doon naman sa mga stations na na-relieve ang station commanders, may inassign naman po na officer in charge, and they are well supervised by the officer in charge of the Davao City Police Office. And there are still enough PNP personnel to go with our operations in the crime prevention and anti-criminality activities, ma'am.
Okay. Major, wala pong special action force na kasama doon sa hahalili muna?
No, there were no staff or special action force na halili. Same personnel pa rin po ng stations ang nagtatrabaho on the crime prevention and anti-criminality activities. Wala pong assignment or additional personnel sa mga stations from other units or other stations.
Major, I understand that the operations that is the subject of the investigations now happened between March 23 to 26. How many operations are involved in the investigation? Can you tell us a little bit more about what exactly they are investigating in?
They are investigating the 7 deaths, the deaths of 7 personalities during the operation in Davao City from March 23 to 26. Yun po yung covered ng investigation.
Okay, dadagdag lang ako no sa tanong ni Gretchen because I also wanted to ask you actually. I understand na sensitive yung mga particulars and specifics of these operations from March 23 to 26, but baka po you can tell us kasi base sa sinabi nyo kanina, Major, no, hindi naman lagi na re-reliebo temporarily ang mga police na sangkot sa mga operations kung saan may namatay na suspect or victim or meron. Having said that, can we safely assume then na medyo mas mabibigat ang accusations or suspicions against these 35 policemen? Because kung nasuspinde 35 sila, medyo marami po yun.
Ma'am, hindi po sila suspended. Wala pong penalty or preventive suspension. Hindi po sila suspended. Administrative relief lang po while ongoing ang investigation. Kasi yung pagka-relieve naman po nila is hindi naman po penalty.
Mayor Baste Duterte said that this is a reminder of the dangers of unchecked power. Sino po kaya yung maaaring tinutukoy niya dito na umabuso sa kapangyarihan? Sino po yung, kumbaga, yung in charge dito na nagrelyebo?
Ang ano naman ng PR11 is to remain committed to upholding the law with integrity and accountability. And the action was really based on the recommendation of RIAS 11. As I have said earlier, it was not done lightly by the Regional Director of Police Office 11. It is with thorough deliberation with other officers and consideration of the circumstances presented by RIAS 11. And of course, PR11 acknowledges the support of the local government of Davao City to PR11, and we will maintain such strong partnership for, of course, for lasting peace and order and public safety, the community within Davao Region.
All right. Thank you so much, Major Catherine De La Rey, for those clarifications, and we await the result of those investigations. Thank you so much again for joining us tonight. Spokesperson of the Davao Region Police, Catherine De La Rey. Up next, business tycoon Ramon Ang says the country should make use of its resources in the West Philippine Sea to support economic.
This is still the big story here on One News. The Philippines' economic managers are looking to significantly reduce poverty by reining in inflation. And to do that, one business tycoon suggests looking to the West Philippine Sea. Shaila Francisco with the report.
President Marcos's economic managers remain optimistic about the country's growth prospects as they target to lift 14 million Filipinos out of poverty by 2028, or by the time PBBM steps down from office. To do this, the government is banking on stable economic growth, which in the first quarter sat at 5.7%.
When we successfully reduce the poverty rate to a single digit by 2028, history will mark the Marcos Jr. presidency as a turning point when the Philippines achieve genuine inclusive growth for Filipinos.
The Philippine Statistics Authority estimates that 22.4%, or over 25 million Filipinos, are in the poverty line as of the first half of 2023. High prices of basic commodities remain a problem for them. That's why the government is also setting another target, this time for rice.
With regard to the rice, we expect rice prices to go down by 20%, maybe by September. This would entail, one, increasing production, and second, reducing tariffs. So I think we have a game plan in place as far as that is concerned.
Meanwhile, to help with the rising power costs, NEDA said they would be focusing more on targeted subsidies.
We need to take the welfare of those vulnerable, the low-income groups, who are least able to afford these price increases. And we have programs for those. So we give targeted subsidies.
Meanwhile, for business tycoon Ramon Ang, the country should start looking at the West Philippine Sea to help curb inflation in the country.
We don't have oil, but we have a very big reserve in West Philippine Sea. That's why they are very interested on the Philippines. So let us not let go of it.
Ang went on to explain how having oil reserves bring commodity prices down in other ASEAN countries.
In Malaysia, the prices of gasoline is 20 pesos per liter. In the Philippines is 60. Reason, Malaysia subsidized 1/3. The other 1/3 is taxes. Philippine government impose taxes, and our neighboring countries don't impose taxes.
That's why Ang said it is important for the country to protect its resources in the West Philippine Sea. Shaila Francisco, we are One News.
Speaking of protecting our stake in the West Philippine Sea, how are we faring in the diplomatic and geopolitical side? To talk to us about that, we have Cleve Arguelles, President and CEO of research firm WR Numero. Magandang gabi.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me.
Okay, Cleve, I mean, we've been seeing the West Philippine Sea almost every day now, and it feels like it's one country hitting the other every chance they can. I mean, where are we at right now at this point in terms of diplomacy?
Yeah, I think that for many reasons, but especially because of the many incidents that has been happening in the past weeks, in particular with respect to the bombarding of the using water cannons of the Chinese Coast Guard um, among Filipinos, that we are observing an escalation or a worsening situation in the West Philippine Sea when it comes to the conflict between the Philippines and China. And our firm ran a series of surveys in December 2023 and in March 2024, both nationally representative. And Filipinos do agree that the tension is worsening in the West Philippine Sea. Our survey shows that 65% of Filipinos, so most Filipinos, feel and believe that the tension is actually worsening in the West Philippine Sea. And I think that is not surprising given what they see on the news as well on a daily basis now.
Cleve, do you have any data on how the 65% actually feel about the increasing tension? Because noticing that tensions are increasing are, of course, a little bit more obvious. You can say that, but have completely different opinions. Do you have data for us on what the people are really saying and what they're thinking?
Right. We've also asked another set of questions about this particular issue on China and the West Philippine Sea, and we want to figure out what Filipinos, ordinary Filipinos, think on the ground about these issues, right? And one of the things that we've learned is, for example, that most Filipinos they do think that the military, the Philippine military, in particular the armed forces of the Philippines, is managing the situation in the West Philippine Sea well. That's around 68% of Filipinos saying that AFP is doing well in the situation. But when we've asked if they think that President Marcos Jr. Is also doing well in terms of his performance in handling the situation, only 39% thinks that he is doing a good job, right? So it's relatively lower when you compare it to what the public thinks, how the public thinks is the AFP doing compared to what the president is doing. And this is very interesting development in public opinion. In fact, we've also learned that compared to the Duterte administration, some Filipinos do find that the situation in the West Philippine Sea is worse now under the new administration, and definitely. Again, this is not surprising. This is reasonable development in terms of public opinion, considering that there has been a shift in the foreign policy preference, foreign policy direction of the Philippines since President Marcos has assumed the presidency.
Did you have a question about that? What do people think about the repivot back to the United States and to the West under this administration as compared, of course, to PRRD, who was famous for shifting us towards China, towards Russia?
Right. Generally, our survey data would show that President Xi Jinping and China as a country does not really enjoy popular support among Filipinos, despite the previous administration's friendlier approach to China, and some would also say that Duterte has campaigned for an improvement in the image and the perception of Filipinos in terms of China and President Xi Jinping and their interest in the West Philippine Sea. Despite all of those, it appears that China doesn't still enjoy popular support among Filipinos. So only 20% of Filipinos express confidence that the Chinese President Xi Jinping is doing the right thing when it comes to world affairs. That's relatively really low, especially if you compare it to the results for the US President Biden. So by that alone, you can think that I think more or less Filipinos do support the Marcos Jr. administration's pivot towards the United States, but not, with the caveat, of course, that this is not blind support, because we've also learned that there's still some skepticism, right, on whether the United States would really do us, would really serve our interests well when it comes to the West Philippine Sea issue. So, for example, the U.S. President Joe Biden, around 13% of Filipinos expressed that they have no confidence in him, that he will do the right thing when it comes to world affairs. So that's also a sizable number, especially if you look at absolute numbers. 13% of 110 million Filipinos, that's quite a lot.
Would Israel have any impact on those numbers? Because I think, based at least only on what I'm saying, totally not data-driven at all, Cleve. But when I go through social media, a lot of people are, let's just say, displeased, tama na, when they see what's happening in Israel. The U.S., of course, figuring really heavily into that conflict. And of course, you can't help but think, if kakampi tayo dito, and kung magyari yung Taiwan, etc., so on and so forth. Do these correlate at all?
Yeah, unfortunately, during the time that we've done the survey, we haven't really included the question on Israel, but we do look forward to running that question in next month as we run the next set of survey. But for example, Philippines is a top importer of arms from Israel, if I'm not mistaken. The last report I've seen is that we're the second largest market for Israel, arms from Israel, right? According to a March 2024 report by an international organization named SIPRI, for example. So I wouldn't be surprised if it has something to do with that as well, considering the behavior of Israel and with the backing of the United States in violation of international law, international norms. If Filipinos, for example, are seeing one and one here in the sense that they're seeing China violating international norms, they're seeing Israel violating international norms, and they're putting it together, then I wouldn't be surprised if there is that there's that particular connection. And you're right, Filipinos are also thinking about the issue in Taiwan, but to our surprise, it appears that Filipinos generally, at least for now, or during the time that we did the survey, do not want the Philippines to be entangled so much in terms of the conflict between China and Taiwan. In particular, our survey shows that 85% of Filipinos, so it's really a high number, believe that the Philippines should remain neutral in the event of an armed conflict between China and Taiwan.
Okay, so the data, medyo opposing, no? On one hand, kakampi ka sa US, but not when they go to Taiwan. So it's kind of funny what you can actually extrapolate from that data.
Yes, you're right. And today we actually did a briefing among different sectors, private sector, diplomats, people in the government and the development sector as well. And one of the key things that we've been sharing about the data is that I think what it shows is that there is a level of, or I describe it as public anxieties and uncertainties in terms of what is happening in the West Philippine Sea. On the one hand, they do understand that our interests may align better with the United States, considering the bullying that we have been receiving from from China rather. But on the other hand, Filipinos are quite skeptical of also tying us together with the United States and all of its consequences and baggages. For example, this issue with in the event of an armed conflict between China and Taiwan. So I think it's if you frame it that way, if you see it that way, that this reflects kind of a developing anxiety and uncertainty among the public towards the issue in the West Philippine Sea, that may explain why there are some contradictory elements in the public opinion.
Cleve, speaking of issues in the West Philippine Sea, I just wanted to go back to that report by Shaila Francisco earlier. We heard Business Tycoon Ramon Ang saying that we need to protect our territory and tap a very large oil reserve in the West Philippine Sea. In terms of asserting our claim in the West Philippine Sea, can this be done, and how should this be done? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it appears that if things will not change and the present conditions will just persist, it appears that this is something that we cannot do, given that China enjoys control significant parts of what is ours and even parts of our exclusive economic zone in the West Philippine Sea. So it would be hard for us to be able to exploit the resources that's available there. And that's partly the reason also why China refuses to give in to our justified claim, right? Because they do want to be able to exploit these resources as well, because it's reported to be a resource rich area, and they do want to exploit it for their economy as much as we want to do it for ourselves, right? So I could imagine that it would be a red line for China, that they wouldn't allow us to be able to exploit those resources, and given the current conditions, that we find it difficult even to do resupply missions, for example, to our troops based there. I think it's quite unlikely, and if not, it will definitely result into an escalation of the situation, and would require a lot of resources from our end to be able to secure the area that we do want to exploit.
Of course, we're talking about different resources here. I mean, for one, it's difficult to fish already in Bajo de Masinloc, but we're also looking at gas reserves in Reed Bank.
Oil and gas in
and
Bank.
yeah, correct. But I'm very, very curious about the timeline of your survey. When did you conduct this? Because last year, I believe there were high approval ratings as to the strategy of the government. And you said that although Filipinos support the Marcos pivot to the United States, they are not blindly supporting the government. So are they able to discern the strategies that the government is employing? For example, the transparency offensive of the Philippine Coast Guard. Meron po ba tayong survey doon na we don't want this, we don't agree with this strategy, we should go to this?
We haven't been able to really go down that route to be able to look at public opinion in terms of the specific tactics and, if not, strategies being pursued by different Philippine actors, Philippine agencies when it comes to the West Philippine Sea issue. But what we do know in the survey that we've done in December 2023 and March 2024 is that first, there's been a decline in the support for the current Marcos Jr. Administration. There's been a substantial double-digit decline, and that may not be related to the issue in the West Philippine Sea that needs to be probed more, right? But it could also be related, given that in this particular survey, when we asked them to rate the performance of different government agencies and government actors in terms of how they're handling the West Philippine Sea issue, it appears that among others, the president received the lowest kind of like positive ratings. It's only at 39%. If you compare it to our Philippine military, it's at 68%, and different other government agencies, just for example, the Coast Guard, also enjoys a higher number of support, close to that of the AFP. So if you draw insights from that, it may appear that to broader public imagination, some of the things that we have been doing, whatever it is that people perceive to be the strategy of the military and the Coast Guard and other government agencies, it appears to be working out well for them. But what the president is doing appears to be still good for a sizable number of Filipino, 40%. That's still high, but that's no longer the majority.
So the Filipinos don't attach the strategy of the military to the president. Is that correct?
Or is it more like
it
he's
appears-
giving
yeah.
command responsibility? So the boots on the ground, they approve, but not to the one, ultimately, who has the last say.
Yeah, it appears so, given that there is a difference in the assessment rating, right, received by these different two actors, right? But we can still probe more, right? Whether that's really the case, whether the Filipino public really do distinguish between the military and its commander-in-chief. And as in many things in Philippine politics, what should be is quite different from how people really perceive it on the ground.
Well, it does bring to mind the controversy over the Westcom commander and issues over authority and who makes the decisions, right? Well, thank you so much for the data that you gave us tonight, and we look forward to more of that on the West Philippine Sea. Thank you so much for joining us, Cleve Arguelles, President and CEO of research firm WR Numero.
Well, barely a week after a Singapore Airlines flight flew into severe turbulence, another plane, this time from Qatar Airways, encountered turbulence while flying from Doha to Ireland, injuring 12 individuals. Flight QR017, a Boeing 787 Dreamliner, was rocked by turbulence while airborne over Turkey on Sunday. The plane, though, made it safely to Dublin Airport. According to reports, the incident lasted less than 20 seconds and occurred during food and drink service. Qatar Airways says passengers and crew members that sustained minor injuries during the flight are now receiving medical attention. Last week, Marlene Singson of the Civil Aviation Authority shared her insights on such incidents here on The Big Story, and she told us that these flight conditions could be attributed to the impact of climate change.
One thing that we are very, very worried about is the global warming. These particular changes also brings about changes in the airspace. The heat index we're experiencing right now is an indication that we are facing severe weather disturbances.
Nakatakot na lumipad, ano?
But it's still safer than cars, ha? Diba? I mean, flying is...
Thanks for putting it into perspective again.
Ito na nga, speaking of climate change, global warming, ganun din, no, ang big picture natin tonight, related pa rin doon. These are scenes in Papua New Guinea after last week's massive landslide where some 2,000 people are believed to be buried under tons of earth. The landslide occurred in the mountainous Enga region in northern Papua New Guinea on Friday, and the latest figure is a sharp rise from earlier estimates. Rescue operations continue in the area in the hopes of finding more survivors. Napakalungkot.
Especially, we're seeing it all over. I mean, here in the Philippines, for one, we did not get to hear from Mon Gualvez, but I heard it's a bad situation over in Quezon. Landslides, power, electricity and water lines are down.
Yeah. And how we started the show, di ba? Yung parang nagkaroon ng hottest ever heat index, 55 degrees sa Samar.
Correct.
Pero, nung isang araw, nakasignal number 1 din sila because of Aghon. So parang, di ba, bagyo, and then the next day, 55 degrees.
You never know. You never know what to expect. Climate change.
I guess this is evidence na siguro kailangan na natin magbago, no? Yung totoo, no? Hindi lang magdasal, ganyan, but with our actual actions.
A good reminder day in and day out on this show.
At hindi pa nga rainy season. So according to Pag-asa, we'll be watching out for that sometime during the first 2 weeks of June. But for now, May 27th, that's it for The Big Story.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in and